here, and she does a lot of different things with a lot of different. It's just I can't even go through all of it. Let me put it this way: I know Stephanie mostly from Rcia, which is a thing that once you become Catholic, a weekend. Uh, it's a weekend retreat that you can take, which is life. It can be life changing, and so. But anyway, Stephanie is going to talk about her conversion story.
Thanks, Mike. Now I'm nervous. First of all, I have to say, I'm wearing a Broncos jersey, but I was really actually only Broncos fan for about 1 minute while Jay Cutler was the quarterback. And I have a Titans t-shirt underneath. Yeah, I got weird looks and stares and when I come in. Okay, as Mike said, I'm Stephanie Broiner, and I grew up in Columbus, Mississippi. I was raised in the Church of Christ. And Church of Christ people out there? Okay, all right, Dale. You knew that about us. Small town Mississippi, didn't know but 2 Catholics, I think, at my school, and they were wild children. And I didn't know anything about the Catholic Church except what I saw on TV movies, you can imagine. But I had a really great, firm foundation in faith. My mom taught me about Jesus from the time I was a little girl and read me Bible stories and took me to church. And unfortunately, my family was a lot dysfunctional. So things got crazy, and my parents had problems, and they ended up getting divorced. But during that whole time, my church was like my safe place. And so my parents divorced, my mom moved back to her hometown, and we lived with my dad. And his mom, my granny, became my church connection, my ride, my somebody to sit with in the pew. And that was where I really felt safe. So growing up, I was confident that I was in the right place. I was doing the right things. I was a good girl because I was scared to death I was going to go to hell if I did anything wrong. And that was where I was. So I came to Nashville to go to college. I went to Vanderbilt, and I started meeting people from all over the place, all walks of life, all religions, all faiths. And I was fascinated by it. So my hometown church people were really worried about me having a good church to go to here. So they got me hooked up with the Church of Christ on Franklin Road and somebody to come pick me up for church. So I did that for about 3 times. And then I said, I'm going to find a ride there. I'm going to come. I'm going to call you in about a month. Well, I mean, those of you who have been in college know that you can kind of go in and out of your faith practices. So I was more out than in. But I kept making new friends, and so many of my new friends were Catholic. And these people went to Mass on the weekends. I was like, how are they doing that? I was amazed. And I thought, well, there must be something to this Catholicism. So I asked questions, and I went on about my life. One of the good friends that I made who was Catholic is my now husband, Joe, and he and I have been married for 30 years. And we did not talk much about faith when we first started dating. I think I was scared to death that he was going to want me to convert. But as we got more serious, we talked a lot about faith. My dad, who had always loved Joe more than he loved me, I was convinced, did pull me aside and say, hey, I'm really worried about you. I don't want you to be a Catholic. And I said, I am not going to be a Catholic. Don't you worry. I'm not going to convert because of some boy. So Joe and I got more serious. We graduated. I went away to grad school in New Orleans. And I tried to find a little Church of Christ there. And I just couldn't find a good fit. And those of you who've been to New Orleans know there's a Catholic church on every corner. So unbeknownst to anybody, including Joe, I started going to Mass by myself. And it felt so right. I I obviously wouldn't go up to receive the Eucharist, but all the other parts, it just felt like some little connection to God that I wasn't getting anywhere else. So Joe would come down to visit me on the weekends, and I would know 2 different churches that were close to me. I would say, well, we can go to this church at this time or this church at this time. And he said, that is so nice of you to look that up for me. So I think I finally told him that I'd been going to Mass, like when I was finished with my time in New Orleans. I really did it all by myself. I thought, this is crazy. I don't want him to know. I don't want him to think I'm going to be Catholic. Anyway, I came back to Nashville, and I finished grad school here, and we got engaged and started talking about, what we were going to do. And we went, I didn't want to have a Catholic Mass for our wedding because I wasn't Catholic, and I thought I would feel left out. So we finally decided on getting married in the church by a priest, but not doing a whole Mass, and having it at a chapel that was kind of a neutral place. So we got married by Father Ed Steiner. Does anybody know Father Steiner? He's hilarious. And so we did our marriage prep with him. And the more I learned about Catholicism, the more I thought, oh, well, it's not so bad. It's not so weird. It's not so superstitious. And I still wasn't quite sold on it, though. So we got married. I got a job. Just happened to be at St. Joseph's School, which is a Catholic school in Madison run by Dominicans. And in the midst of all this, I'm asking questions. And Joe says, you know what, I can't answer all these questions. We're going to go talk to Father Joe McMahon because he's great. He's going to answer all your questions. So he was living here at the time in residence. And so we made an appointment with Father Joe and went, and I asked question after question. We were there for probably an hour and a half. And finally, Father, he was so patient. He's like, all right, listen. You just go to Rcia, and you don't have to sign anything. You don't have to give them anything. You don't even have to tell them your name. You just walk in, and you sit down, and you listen. So I did. I came, and the school looked different then. It was in what was the library, which is now pre-K. And I sat down, and I happened to get there right after Easter. So everybody had just joined the church. I mean, I think there were angels floating around. It was spirit-filled, and it was awesome. So I listened to this new Catholic do a faith sharing, a talk kind of like this, and I was hooked. I thought, I have to come back here. I'm going to come back here next week, and the next week, and the next week. And then they said, well, I'm sorry, honey, it's summer. There aren't any more sessions. I was like, oh, bummer. Well, how can I get more of this? And they said, well, come back in the fall. So I did. In the meantime, I was teaching at St. Joseph, and what a gift the Dominican sisters are. So they're here in the school at St. Henry. They're in the school at St. Joseph. I had never met a sister before I started working with them. Such powerful witnesses to faith. I learned so much that year. I learned so much from the fourth graders that I taught, from the sisters, and I feel like it was all just, part of how I ended up here. But I got close to the Easter Vigil, and I just couldn't quite commit. I just felt like there were still so many questions. I still had hesitation. I just didn't feel like I could go up there and say, yes, I believe all this. So I said, I can't do it. And Jack Sarugi, who was in charge of RCA at that time, he was a deacon. I think that he was brokenhearted. He was like, oh, and it made me feel so bad. I said, but I'll come back. And he was like, okay, what I did. So 2.5 years later, I felt fully like I could commit. And in the midst of all of that, teaching at Catholic school and being around the sisters and listening to these fourth graders tell me such fascinating things about their own faith, I thought, how can this 10-year-old be more faithful than I am? I mean, that's amazing, right? And the kids were all, the environment in that Catholic school, I mean, it's like the one here. It's amazing. Everybody is kind and loving, not always, but, that's the goal. And then if you're not, you get called on it, and there's accountability, and it's just a wonderful environment. So all of that contributed to me being here. So I just remember being surrounded at the vigil. I was so full of joy, just completely sure I was in the right place. Joe was there. A couple of the sisters that I taught with at St. Joseph were there. All my St. Henry Rcia friends were there. Joe's family was there. My family was not there. So it's because I didn't tell them I was doing it. If I could do it over again, I probably would have told them before. But I was so nervous about what they were going to say. You know, all those years ago, my dad was like, I want to be a Catholic. I'm not going to be a Catholic. I was a Catholic. So I did decide a couple weeks later that I should tell him what was going on. And of course, they were upset. I don't know. I don't know how upset they were. On the outside, he was upset. But I'm going to say that man, my dad, my stepmother, and my granny came to every one of my children's sacraments. I have 4 awesome kids. They're grown. They're adult children. And they came to baptisms and first communions, confirmations, and they came. So I think that even though they might have said, oh, no, they were really okay because they knew that I was where I was supposed to be and just completely happy here in this wonderful community and with my faith. So since then, a lot has happened. I won't tell you all the minutia because we'd be here till next Tuesday. But what stands out is that this family of faith has supported me through all of the raising of kids and job changes and deaths in my family and my losing a parent, my husband losing a parent. This community is amazing, and it's because we are the body of Christ. And I thought when I was in the RCIA that when the vigil came and I was Catholic, that I was done. And of course, that's not actually true. You keep learning and growing, at least you should. And so since then, I have found many ways to deepen my faith. And one of them is that retreat that Mike mentioned, the Curcio. He said it could be life-changing. For me, it totally was. So it's been, 19 years ago, I made my Curcio, and I still meet with a group of women every week from that weekend, and we talk about our lives and our commitments that we're making for our growth in faith and our issues, and it's just a wonderful support. And every time I see them, I get a little closer to the kingdom of God through them. Also, teaching in this Catholic school, I cannot tell you the blessings that happen every day. I learn so much from those little children, from their sweet intentions that they pray for, from their just genuine openness and faithfulness. And I say, I've told so many people this over the years, I've probably told it to some of you, teaching second grade is like getting a spiritual booster shot every year. So I feel like I'm constantly trying to share faith with them, but they're also just sharing faith with me. So as you continue on this journey, I'm so grateful for you all. I'm grateful that I'm asked to do this witness talk, even though it stresses me out, because it makes me reflect and remember and think. And I want you all to look for ways to keep growing in your faith, even after that beautiful Easter Vigil. We are praying for you. My class every day prays for the candidates and catechumens in the RCIA. So you are well covered in prayer. Thank you for listening, and I look forward to getting to know you better.
So when Kristen said that this is Super Bowl weekend and our Super Bowl. The Super Bowl is coming up, and we need to all dress in our team garb. Well, my daughter and I went to about 5 or 6 Titans games, and they never won at any of the games that we went to, so I couldn't wear Titans. And there's not any other team, any other pro team that I'm really a fan of, so you see me in UT college garb. I will say this, I have to say this, I am going to. In 1999 or 2000, whenever it was that they went to the Fiesta Bowl to win the national championship, my sister happened to be living with my brother-in-law, who was a pilot for Southwest, in Phoenix, and she happened to be friends with the lady who was the chair of the Fiesta Bowl parade. So I got tickets, saw them win the national championship. And then a couple of years ago, when they went to the Orange Bowl, my daughter, who is a big UT fan, did not go to UT, but a big UT fan, she wanted to go, and we went. And so I'm a dedicated UT fan. Go Vols. Sorry. Okay, now we're going to talk about the sacraments of matrimony and holy orders. And I want to go back. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago, Father Eric started us off with, or no, it was Father Kibbe started talking about the sacraments of initiation, which were what? Baptism. What else? Confirmation. And Eucharist or First Communion. Right? Those are the first two here can only be done once. This one is done all the time, but you do have a First Communion, okay? That's the sacrament of initiation. And then, what were the other sacraments that he talked about last week? They were sacraments of what? Healing. Very good. So the two sacraments of healing are anointing of the sick. Okay, and then what's the other one? Reconciliation. Thank you. Now, what do you think they call the ones that we're talking about? The two, I just mentioned them. One is, well, we'll do marriage first. And then holy orders. What do they have in common? What are they dealing with? Commitment. What else? Vows. There you go. Service. They are called sacraments of service. You do take vows, but what do you take a vow to do? To serve. Okay? So these these are the ones that in initiation, in order to get into the club, you do these. Okay? These are this is nice to know. I mean, that the church has these healing sacraments out here. That the anointing of the sick, if you're sick, and then reconciliation. And as we said last week, you know, it's good to go on a regular basis because it's kind of like going to the dentist. Did I tell you all that story, or the analogy? Going to the dentist, you go to the dentist. If you haven't been to the dentist for 10 years, what is it like? Well, there's all this plaque built up, right? And the dentist is going to have to really dig in there, and you're going to probably bleed, and it's going to be painful, and you don't want to do it, and it's awful. But then when you walk out of the dentist office, your teeth feel clean, and it's great. So that if you then go every 6 months, it's not so bad, right? That's what confession is. If you haven't been in a long time, or the very first time that you go, it is going to be daunting. But once you go, then if you go on a regular basis, a couple of times a year, then, you know, your soul will be clean, just like your teeth are clean, right? And one priest said, when I was telling this in front of a bunch of other people, he came up to me and said, yes, and if you don't go to the dentist long enough, your teeth will fall out. Ha ha ha. Never mind. I thought that would get a mild chuckle or something? Okay, all right. So these are the three types of sacraments, and this is the sacrament of service. So the sacrament of service, matrimony. How is matrimony a sacrament of service? Who's serving who? What are we doing here? Right? You are serving, the husband and the wife are serving each other, and they're serving God, and then the fruits of their marriage, the fruits of their union will be children, and they will be serving the children. Okay? And we'll talk about that more, but that's where the service is. Whereas holy orders is, and I'll talk about who, holy orders means the people that are ordained to be the leaders of the church. And so, you have the bishop, the priests, and the deacons. And we all three are ordained, and I'll talk about that in a few minutes and all the details with it. But I just wanted to give you the sense of, now who are the priest, the deacon, the priest, and the bishop serving? The church. They're serving you, okay? Because you are the body of Christ, right? And so, as I like to say, the priests, and well, actually, the ultimate shepherd is the bishop. But the shepherd of this particular flock of St. Henry, and there's about 5,000 of us, if you didn't know that. There's 2,300 families, which is at least 5,000 or 6,000 people, if not more. But Father Eric is the shepherd of the flock, okay? And then he has two assistant shepherds who are Father Kibbe and Father Shinto. And then he has three deacons who we call sheepdogs, because I did get a laugh. Oh, good. All right, I'm trying to make it interesting. All right, so now let's talk about marriage and what is marriage. And being the lawyer that I am, and I'm going to have these notes with me so that I don't forget. Marriage in the secular world. And when I say secular, what I mean is outside of the church. Like you can go down to the county clerk's office and you can get married in front of a government official. They used to call them justices of the peace. They don't have justices of the peace anymore. But the county clerk, somebody there at the county clerk's office can marry you if you want. And so when I say secular world, here is what the Webster's Dictionary defines as marriage. It's the state of being united to a person of the opposite sex as husband and wife in a consensual and contractual relationship recognized by law. Of course, that's an older definition. It's changed because of the U.S. Supreme Court decision. In terms of a secular marriage, you can be two people of the same sex to be secular marriage. Now, the most important thing to remember is it's a contract. So, I used to be a lawyer for many, many years, and so I have to go through this just to get this out here so you'll understand. What is a contract? A contract is an agreement between two parties. And I see Jeff back there is just smiling because he's a lawyer also. So maybe I'll pick on him. Yeah. Okay. Let's say, Jeff, if I ask you to mow my lawn, I offer to mow your lawn, let's say it that way. I offer to mow your lawn, and you say, okay, I accept, and you'll pay me $50 to mow your lawn. Okay, that is a contract. There's detriment and benefit flowing both ways. The detriment to me is I have to go mow his lawn, and that's called sweat equity or whatever you want to call it. The benefit to me is that I get the $50. His benefit is he gets his lawn mowed. His detriment is he has to give me $50. Does that make sense? So, it imposes rights and responsibilities on the parties. A marriage is a partnership which is an ongoing contract. So like if you have a business partnership, when you enter into a partnership to do some sort of, I don't know what the business would be, but to have a business, you would enter into a partnership and it would be an ongoing relationship. Now, with a partnership, a business partnership can be dissolved in two ways. One of the parties wants to end the partnership and violates or breaches the partnership agreement, or both parties agree to mutually dissolve the partnership. Either way. Marriage, in the secular sense, is a romantic partnership. in the sense that you get married and you can stay married under the law as long as you want to stay married. And if you decide that you wanted to, quote, dissolve the partnership of marriage, you can do it by, it's called irreconcilable differences. You just can't, you just don't fulfill me anymore, or whatever. It didn't have to be any reason. You can just get divorced, okay? So the statistics now. In the United States, fewer people are getting married. The percent of people from 18 to 34 who were married in 1978, which didn't seem that long ago to me, but it is apparently almost 50 years ago now. It's getting up on there. It was almost 60% of the people were married between the ages of 18 and 34. In 2018, which is a few years ago, that figure, and I need to update these figures, but that figure has dropped to under 30%. So there's a significant drop in people who've been getting married in the legal sense. And couples are marrying later. Men are marrying at about age 29, and women are marrying at about 28, age 27. And I can tell you from, I do a lot of the pre-marriage preparation, that is pretty much true. To have a couple that's 22 or 23 years old coming in to get married, they're not the norm anymore. They're the exception to the rule. Now, here's the interesting thing, the divorce rate. The national average is over 50%. Divorce rate. Whereas among Catholics, and when I say Catholics, I'm talking about active practicing Catholics, that divorce rate drops down to about 27, 28%. It's almost half. Okay, there must be something to it then, right? Marriage in the Catholic Church is a sacrament. And what does that mean? It's an outward sign of the presence of Christ. It is a lifelong commitment, and there are not just two parties in the marriage, there's three parties in the marriage. And the third party in the marriage is God, or the Holy Spirit. And you are called, in one sense, to one of four vocations, either marriage, the single life, ordination, or religious life. Unfortunately, single life, I think, should have, if somebody decides they want to be single but they're not going to be a priest or a brother, perhaps they could have some sort of ceremony to be that, but there's not. So it just is. So there's two aspects of the sacrament of marriage that, well, let me jump back. I want to read this from the Catechism. The Catechism, here's what the Catechism says. Since God created man and woman, their mutual love becomes an image of the absolute and unfailing love with God, with which God loves both man and woman. It is good, it is very good in the Creator's eyes. That comes from Genesis. Do you remember me talking about that at some point? Remember about the very good? And this love which God blesses is intended to be fruitful and to be realized in the common work watching over creation. Because we are given charge of the earth, basically. We are. And so God blessed them and said, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it. Now, there's two aspects to a sacramental marriage. One is the unity of love between the husband and the wife. That's the romantic, it starts out as the romantic love, but it continues on as I tell couples, right now, when they're preparing to get married, the fire, it's like you're at a big bonfire, and that fire is really blazing, and that's what, like, when you first get married is like. It's just absolutely wonderful, and it's all-consuming, and it's great. But you know what? That fire burns down after a while, and what's left are these warm coals, and you want to keep those coals, continuing to burn, and it's not the same as it was, let's say, 10, 15, 20 years later. The second aspect it's in addition to the unity of love, is procreation or having children. The two go hand in hand. And so as a Catholic, when you get married, you agree that you're going to love, honor, and obey this person. Love, and I don't think we use the word obey in the vows, the way it's written. But anyway, you're going to love and honor this person in good times and in bad, in sickness and in health, till death do us part. So it's for life. But one of the questions that gets asked of a couple when they are married in a Catholic church is, are you open to having children? Not that you have to have children, but that you're open to having children. And so a Catholic marriage children are a part of Catholic marriage. And my wife and I, we could not have children naturally, so I think we need to say also that, and I like to say this, that it means also possibly adopting. We adopted our 2 daughters. And so, anyway. Now, I do want to read, this is from Vatican II. This is a document in Vatican II, and I do want to read through this, and I'll try and read it slowly because it is very good. It says, by its very nature, the institution of marriage and married love are ordered to the procreation and education of offspring, and it is from them that it finds its crowning glory. They are the fruits of our love, is the way they put it. Thus, the man and the woman help and serve each other by their marriage partnership. They become more conscious of their unity and experience it more deeply from day to day. The intimate union of marriage as a mutual giving of 2 persons and the good of the children demand total fidelity from spouses and require an unbreakable unity between them. God abides with them in order that their mutual self-giving spouses will love each other with an enduring fidelity as he loves the church and delivered it himself for it. Authentic married love is caught up into the divine love. Authentic married love is caught up into the divine love and is directed and enriched and redeemed, a redemptive power of Christ in his salvific action. So what I like to say is that the sacrament of marriage is not just an agreement or contract between a husband and a wife to live and raise children. That's not all it is. It is not even a romanticized self-giving love that a husband and a wife might have for each other. In other words, sacrificing for each other. It's not just about me serving my wife and my wife serving me. It goes on to say, a marriage is a sacramental love between husband and wife that has God in the middle. And that self-giving love is part of and connected to the divine love. And each of the spouses can therefore help each other and their children grow closer to that divine love. It's sort of like, if you think about the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, that our God is a relational God. And the Holy Spirit is the flow of love between God the Father and God the Son. And that we are called up, first off, in our baptism, into that divine love. Okay? As Catholics, we're called up into that divine love. And that's why we come to Mass and that's why we receive the sacraments, is to help us to become deeper, is for Christ to live in me. Okay? But in addition, if you get married, there is that additional sacrament. So you not only have the baptism, you have sacrament of baptism and confirmation being there to strengthen you in difficult times, and then Eucharist to be there to you on a weekly, at least weekly basis, if not a daily basis if you want it to. But the sacrament of matrimony, what I tell couples when I marry them is the minister of the sacrament is not me or the priest. That's not the minister of the sacrament. You two are the ministers of the sacrament. And this really kind of like shakes them up a little bit because they don't realize. You are the ministers of the sacrament because when you exchange the vows, that is when the sacrament happens. And I, as a deacon or a priest or even a bishop, we are just official representatives of the church watching this happen. Because all sacraments, possibly, there's a whole argument about why reconciliation could be considered public, but all of these other sacraments are public. It's a public celebration. A sacrament is a public celebration. So, Put another way, marriage is a relationship much like the relationship between the Trinity that I've already mentioned that. God invites us through the sacrament of marriage to participate in God's love in a unique way. The human love between a man and a woman is brought together in marriage, in which they then participate with God in the divine love relationship. So what I will tell you next, this is probably what I was talking talk last night on the Synoptic Gospels, and one of the things I said was, what people remember are stories. So you're probably out of this whole talk going to remember my goo-goo story, okay? So when my wife and I got married, we were married by Monsignor George Rolling. He's this little bitty guy. He's a little gravelly voice. He was just a wonderful person. Monsignor Rolling, when it came to the homily, he basically said, in his little gravelly voice, he said, Mike and Janet, you guys, it's just 4 things. You just got to remember this. It's God first, spouse second, children third, and then your job. And just keep it in that order. That was it. And I thought to myself, I have told so many people that because one of the things that a lot of times happens with couples is they get so involved in raising kids that they forget each other. And by the time the last kid goes off to college, they're strangers. And so one of the things that I tell couples is that you need to keep that spousal relationship is more important than your children. You got to keep that in mind. But that more important than the spousal relationship is your relationship with God. And that job comes down in 4th place. Story. He said, love comes in many different ways, Mike. He said, you can be driving home from work and you stop at a convenience store. And you get you something from the convenience store and you decide, well, maybe I should get Janet something. Okay, all right, Monsignor, what are you? He says, well, you just get her a goo-goo and just take it home to her and she'll love you for it. So I thought, he tells this story and I thought, okay. I was about a few weeks later after we were married, I thought I actually stopped at a convenience store and found myself looking for a goo-goo. But being the attorney that I was, I thought, well, 1 goo-goo's not going to be enough. I've got to get like a carton of goo-goos. And I did. I got a 6-pack of goo-goos. Well, I didn't know my wife well enough because I got home and I was just so excited to give her those goo-goos. And she looks at me and smiles and says, honey, I'm allergic to chocolate. And I thought, okay, all right. So I ate the goo-goos. That's the end of that story. Next thing. Okay? So, John and Terry Bosio, who were a married couple from St. Stephen's who have been involved in the marriage ministry, and they've written a book. Unfortunately, Terry passed away this last year. They've been married for many, many years, 50 plus years. They said that marriage as a sacrament enables each of us to help each other to bring each other closer to God in our faith journey. And this is what we talk about when I say that it's a sacrament of service, because you're serving each other, and then together you're serving God, and then you're also the fruits of your labor. You're serving your children, and then as a family, you serve together and you serve God and you serve the community. Like, for example, when my daughters were at a certain age, we actually started going to Second Harvest Food Bank to help sort cans, which, when you're about 12 years old, that you can do that. So we got them to doing that sort of thing. Then I have to tell one other little story about my daughters. This is a funny one. They gotten into Father Ryan High School. They went through St. Henry School, graduated, and then went on to Father Ryan High School. And they have these things called, does everybody know what I mean when I say service hours? The children have to get service hours, right? Okay. So they had to get service hours here, but then when they got to Father Ryan to get service hours, it had to be something that was directly serving the poor, okay? And so they found out from the scuttlebutt was, and they asked me because they knew I worked with Room at the Inn, they said, Dad, can we get service hours for being an innkeeper at Room at the Inn? Like when you sleep, like when you go away, Dad, on Sunday nights to sleep for overnight, we can actually earn hours by sleeping. That's how a 16-year-old junior in high school thinks. That's what they think. Oh, that's great. And I said, yeah, why don't we do that? I said, so next time I was an innkeeper, they said, yeah, Dad, we'll do this, blah, blah, blah. And so back then, we had 24 people, not 12. We now have 12 guests. We had 24, and they were in the gymnasium. And they had these pads out that each person would sleep on. And what the girls didn't know was that we were going to be down there with them sleeping on the gymnasium floor on these pads. And what they also didn't realize was that people would be getting up in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and making noise. People, there were a lot of people, this was in the wintertime, so there were a lot of people that had colds and were coughing and so forth. And so, long story short, when we woke up the next morning, they go, "Dad, we didn't get any sleep. We didn't get any sleep. Why didn't you tell us?" I said, "Because I want you to see what it's like to be homeless." And they got it. They understood. I am able to, I haven't, because of my back, I don't do the room in the innkeeper anymore, but I did it for years, and after a while you sort of get used to it, you're expecting it and stuff. But that's all to point to service. It goes all back to service and marriage. Okay, a little far afield there tonight. Okay, before I go into the holy orders, I do want to mention there are 3 key elements. If you want to write this down, this would be something you want to write down, particularly if you're single and maybe are thinking about getting married or getting married. There's 3 things that they will ask you. One is fidelity. In other words, you will be asked the question, will you be faithful to each other? On the altar, that's one of the questions. The second question is, do you realize that this is for life? And then the third question is, are you open to having children? And so that's what a Catholic marriage is, the sacrament of matrimony. So now I'm going to jump to, does anybody have any questions about the sacrament of matrimony?
What about couples either that are older or couples where they physically can't have children?
They don't say that you have to have children. It's just that you're open to the possibility of children. If you have a couple that is beyond the age of childbearing, they actually omit that particular question.
But a couple that's younger, that's still childbearing age, but physically can't.
Well, if they physically can't have children, then actually the way it reads is that that you don't have to require them to try and have children if they can't have children. Now, with that said, my wife and I, when we got married at an older age, she was of childbearing age, and so we said yes. But then within a few years, she couldn't have children, and that's when we decided to adopt children. So does that answer it? Okay, yeah.
Will the church marry 2 people of the same sex?
It's not a sacrament.
Sorry?
It's not a sacrament.
It's not a sacrament.
It's not a sacrament because it has to be
So
a man and a
they do
woman.
not recognize that as
It's not a sacrament.
marriage.
I can tell you that it's not a sacrament. I mean, that's the short answer to it. Legally, a marriage, and this is what I tell couples too, is that it's like there's different levels. Married legally, that's one level, and then the sacrament is on top of that, is just another level. So there's, and it takes both, and in order to be a sacrament, it has to be a man and a woman according to the catechism.
So the church does not recognize a legal marriage between the same person, people of the same sex.
We don't recognize, it can't be a sacrament because it's not done before a priest or a deacon or a bishop, because it's not a sacrament. I mean, I don't know how to say it other than that. Yes, ma'am. I don't know the answer to that question. Of all walks of life to the church, but in terms. Okay.
I know sometimes people are married by a priest and sometimes by a deacon.
Mm-hmm.
Are there rules?
No, it's a good question, and here's typically what happens. If you're Catholic and you're marrying, say, somebody who's a Methodist or a Presbyterian, what'll happen is the young person who's the Presbyterian or Methodist that's in the couple, they decide between themselves that because of the fact that the non-Catholic cannot receive communion, They would prefer that it not be at a mass, and it doesn't have to be at a mass. And so what happens is it's typically done by a deacon, although a priest can also do the sacrament of matrimony without a mass. But that's the reason. I guess is the easiest way to say it, is that if you have somebody who is not Catholic and they're marrying a Catholic, that's typically when it happens. And it happens quite a bit, to be quite frank. So, but that's there's no rule there. That's just between the young man and the young woman as to what they want to do. Okay.
The sacrament of marriage has to be the secretary of the clergy. Cannot be the park.
Okay. It can be in a park. If you have to ask for it normally marriage normally the ceremony normally must occur in a church or a chapel. It can occur outside of that, but you have to ask for a dispensation from the bishop. So, for example, if you have somebody that's gravely ill in the hospital and wants to get married, the bishop that dispensation, the priest will call the bishop. And in those circumstances, I would think wedding. Just no, the bishops do not grant it. It's not like there's a rule against it. It's just that you have to ask for a dispensation. I can guarantee you the bishops are not going to grant it. I shouldn't say that. Never mind. Just erase that part. The next one is the sacrament of holy orders. Holy orders, what does that mean? The word order here actually comes from ancient Rome, and it is the establishment of a civil body to govern. So nation is the establishment of really the leaders of the church in essence. There are I'm not going to try and write this on the board. You have the bishop, a priest, and a deacon, and they're all ordained. But their ordinations are yes, ma'am.
Where do the nuns fall into that?
The nuns and the brothers are not ordained. They actually take vows, which are different than ordination. Ordination is a sacrament, whereas once you take a vow, it's consecrated, it is for life. And that would apply not just to nuns who are, and I'm going to talk about them in a minute, they're cloistered. When you use the word nun, you don't mean like the Dominican sisters. They're not nuns. They're sisters because they're out in the world, whereas the nuns are cloistered, and their job, like the monks in monasteries, are to pray. That's what they do. That's what their job is to pray together, all that. That's different than ordination, which is in itself a sacrament. The two are not the same. Okay, does that make sense? Okay. So, who can do what? We've got 7 sacraments, right? Baptism. A bishop can baptize, a priest can baptize, and a deacon can baptize. Okay? And then marriage. Who can, we're not really the ministers of the sacrament, but who can witness it? A bishop can witness it, a priest can witness it, and a deacon can witness it. So those are the 2 sacraments that all 3 can do. The deacons, those are the only 2 that the deacons can do. Next, the Eucharist, reconciliation and anointing of the sick. Those are done by the bishop and the priest only. And why is that? Well, my ordination is an ordination actually of service as a deacon, whereas the priest, when he is ordained, and the bishop, of course, is already a priest, his ordination is one where he is called to step into the shoes of Jesus, in persona Christi is what they call it, meaning that he is acting as Christ, and one of the big things that Christ did was what? Sacrifice. So that he is the one, the priest and the bishop are the 2 who are the ones that consecrate the host at the Mass. And that's because they are acting as Jesus when they are saying those words, okay? The others of anointing of the sick and reconciliation are both have aspects of forgiveness in them, and only Jesus can forgive. And so only a priest and a bishop can hear confessions or anoint the sick. And because there are a lot of priests that would love for deacons to be able to anoint the sick, but that's not what our call is. Okay? And then, the last one is ordination. And only the, I dropped off confirmation. The confirmation is done primarily by the bishop, but the bishop can and does delegate at times that sacrament. And so when it comes to the Easter Vigil, the bishop delegates to all of the priests in their various parishes, the pastors like Father Eric, the power to anoint, to do the anointing of confirmation. Okay. And the one other one that I forgot to mention is ordination, and only the bishop can ordain people. So even a priest cannot ordain somebody else. Only a bishop can. Okay. Now, who of those three do you think can receive all the sacraments? Exactly, the deacon. And I have received all of them. It's really cool.
Can a priest also?
No, because he can't marry.
What about a priest that came from the,
That's
already married and another,
But he's already married in another faith. You're talking about like Episcopalian priest, for example. He is not receiving the sacrament within the Roman Catholic Church. That's what I'm saying. He's receiving the I don't even know I'm not sure exactly how that works in terms of when they come into the church, how they look upon that. In the Episcopal Church they would say that's a sacrament. Do we recognize the sacrament? I don't know. But what I'm talking about is within the Catholic Church, the only person that can receive all 7 sacraments is a deacon. And just so you'll know, and I'll mention this in a couple of minutes, I'll mention in a couple of minutes. It's a good question, though. You almost had me.
I have got you.
Okay, all right, fair enough. So all bishops are first ordained as transitional deacons. Okay, there's 2 types of deacons. There's transitional deacons and there's permanent deacons. So when all priests and bishops are first ordained as deacons, they're transitional, and that means that they're only a deacon for like 6 months or a year. And then they go on to become, then they're ordained as a priest. Okay? Whereas a permanent deacon, like myself, we are ordained as a permanent deacon, and that's it. And my vows are that I will pray the liturgy of the hours every day, and that I will obey my boss, who is not the priest. My boss is the bishop, ultimately. Okay. So let me go. I don't know that I have time to go through the history of the holy orders. The history of holy orders, the reason I wanted to mention it is that, you think of Christ as priest, prophet, and king, and those are 3 aspects that come up within the context of no, never mind. It would require too much, and I only have about 5 minutes here. So I do want to get into some of the things you probably are going to you might be interested in. As I said, a deacon's ordination is a ministry of service, not sacrifice. That the deacon, as a permanent deacon, my job is to, among other things, is to proclaim the word. So that when I'm proclaiming the gospel, just as much as, in one sense, when Father Eric consecrates the host, he is standing in the shoes of Christ. Christ is there. When I'm proclaiming the gospel, Christ is speaking, not me. That's why only deacons and priests are to proclaim the gospel. And then I also serve the congregation. Each deacon chooses a different ministry, usually. My ministry when I first became a deacon was the Rcia weekends. But then when my wife retired, Father Mark, now Bishop Beckman, asked me to take over as the RCI director. So you are my service. I am your servant. Now, requirements of the priesthood. They have to be male and unmarried. You have 2 years of pre-theology and philosophy, and then 4 years in the theology from the seminary. And you have to make promises of celibacy, obedience, and praying the Liturgy of the Hours. The bishop has to be selected by the Pope from 3 names given by the papal nuncio, and that happened here. Our Father Mark was selected by Pope Francis to be the Bishop of Knoxville. He has to be 35 years old and have a doctorate in theology. So it's like you're not just a priest, but you have to be a priest of a certain age, and you also have to have an advanced degree. Deacons, permanent deacons, can be married or unmarried, but 99% of the time they're married when they become a deacon. And you can be between the ages of 35 and 65 at ordination. It's 4 years of formation. And our promises, as I said, obedience, praying the Liturgy of the Hours. And there's one other that I wanted to save to mention at this point. When I became a deacon, my wife, she had to write a letter, and I had to write a letter to the bishop. Separate letters that we put in an envelope, and we gave to the bishop saying that I wanted to be a deacon and blah, 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 and that she was approved of it. It's okay. And she was fine with it, because it means a lot. It means a lot of commitment on my part. Part of it is, if she, after I was ordained, if she predeceases me, I cannot remarry. I'm like a priest if I want to remain as a deacon. And it's just part of it. Okay, very quickly, I want to go through the religious. You have, there's different, you'll hear things like brothers and sisters and nuns and Jesuits and friars. All of these people are generally people that live in community together. Brothers are like, they could either be monks at a monastery, say like Gethsemane or St. Meinrad, or what's the one down in Coleman? Oh, what's the name of that one? Yeah, that's it. Thank you, St. Bernard. Those are all monasteries, and those are monks. And the monks there, yes, ma'am. No. Actually a very good question. I was about to say, you become a monk first. Like, for example, at St. Meinrad, I'm very familiar with the master of theology. A monk, you become a monk first, so you have to go through vows. Same. If you wanted to then become a priest, they do to become a priest. You have to go and be ordained as a priest. So then you're both a priest and a monk. Okay? And so then with sisters and nuns, the difference, yes, sir.
So priests, other priests have a different pipeline to priesthood, is that correct?
Yes. There's there's, we live, go to the diocese and apply, and they have to go through and then the bishop decides which seminary they're going to go to. Diocesan priests, and they come back here and they live out their lives within Middle Tennessee. They don't go anywhere else because they're a diocesan priest, and they are attached to the Bishop of Nashville, just like I'm attached to the Bishop of Nashville. In other words, when Bishop Chobe, when I was ordained, it was by Bishop Chobe. When Bishop Chobe died, then Bishop Spalding was ordained, and he's my boss. So it's whoever is in the office. Okay? Yeah, very good. Sisters and nuns are like monks in that they're cloistered, and their job is to pray. Take on different charisms, or what's the right word? Ministries. For the Dominicans, who have a convent over near Metro Center. Their ministry is teaching, and so they send sisters to St. Henry. We have how many? 4 or 5? 5. We have 5 sisters here. We'll just say 5. And they have sisters in other places here in Nashville, but they have them in Australia, have them in England, have them all over the world. With friars, these are there. I'm not as clear on friars as but they're not monks. They go out like dealing with hospitals or dealing with prison ministries and those sorts of things. And then the Jesuits are a law unto themselves. The Jesuits are very, very smart. They require that they were a religious order that was started by Saint Ignatius of Loyola in about the 16th century in the 1500s. And Jesuits require I think it's either 10 or 15 years of training before they can become a Jesuit. Now, a Jesuit they don't have any one particular thing that they do. You can have a Jesuit that's a doctor, like a medical doctor. You can have a Jesuit that's a professor at a university. There are Jesuits who are clowns, literally. I mean, that's what they do. That's their thing. So, okay. Now, moving on, I talked about monasteries. There's different types of religious orders, too. Yes, ma'am?
Which of these roles are these jobs?
No, what they do is it's a vocation. And so, like, for example, with the priests, they lead a modest life. Father lives in one of these houses. Do you know where the cloister is? The cloister is just around the corner. It's a retirement community, and they're nice little duplexes. That's where Father lives. They don't live in any big houses or whatever, but they're paid a modest salary. They do have a lot of things paid for them by the church, but then, like for example, with monks don't own anything. So like when I go up for spiritual direction, I go up to St. Meinrad, and one of the monks up there who's a priest is my spiritual director. He told me one time, he pulled out a book and he says, I don't own this book. He opened it up and it said, it's on loan from St. Meinrad to him. Everything that they have to give to, any gift they get, they have to give to the abbot, and then the abbot decides if they can have it or not. So they don't really have, the monks don't have money at all. I mean, they may have a little bit of money, but I don't know. I mean, everything's paid for them. Pardon? Yes, I'm paid. Yes. And the priests are paid, yeah, okay. Modest. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah, I forgot. There's diocesan, thank you, diocesan priests and religious priests. And religious priests would be a particular religious order. Like what? Right, like Carmelite priests, and there's different sort of priests. Like they are put on loan essentially. When you see one here, like Father Shinto is on loan, so to speak. I call it on loan. He's here, but he's not a permanent diocesan priest. He may be moved at some point, along the line. Yeah. Yes, there is no such thing as a religious permanent deacon. They're all diocesan. Yeah. Boy, I'm getting a lot. Yes.
So one year formation is just decided when the permanent deacon or tradition?
No, you go into the program. It's a permanent deacon program that I went into. No, it wasn't like you were.
You considered it, right?
Long before long before. It depends upon the religious order. Yes, I think, but yes, there are priests who do take vows of poverty. I think you're correct in the religious order priests. But there is a certain simplicity, I think Pope Francis said many years ago at the beginning of a new year, he said if you're going to make a New Year's resolution, he said make the more modest purchase. You don't have to have the best of everything. So, Okay? So I mentioned monasteries, that there are different type of religious orders. There's Trappist, Benedictine, Dominican. They all live in community together. They're not tied to a particular bishop. They have a superior or an abbot. Like at St. Meinrad, there's an abbot, and he is in charge of all the monks and the priests who are monks. Convents, I've already mentioned. Dominicans teach. Sisters of Mercy, I forgot to mention. Sisters of Mercy do their ministries are hospitals. Oh, I do want to mention the hierarchy. Yeah, okay. So this is a question we get a lot. We get a lot of these questions and people are curious about. Okay, so the Pope is first off and foremost the Bishop of Rome. Okay? He is the Bishop of Rome. He is elected by a college of cardinals for life, except when, like, for example, Pope Benedict decided to retire, and then we had a new, and that had been done before, but it had been many hundreds of years before when that had been done. And so cardinals are selected by the Pope, and there are 120 active cardinals at any given time, and they cannot be over the age of 80 to be an active cardinal. So like if you're a cardinal and you're 79, you're still active, and if the Pope dies, then you would be one of the people that would go to the Sistine Chapel where they close it off and be voting on who the next Pope is going to be. But if you're 80, you're not. Because if you're 80 or over, I think it is, that you're no longer an active cardinal. You're still a cardinal. Now, here's the confusing thing. Cardinals are really just bishops and archbishops who've been chosen by the Pope to be a cardinal. The only function of the cardinal, really and truly, as a practical matter, is to select the next Pope. Okay? And so, does that make sense? Does everybody understand what I'm saying? It's not like it could theoretically be this way, but it's not like I could be appointed a cardinal. Okay? It's the bishops and archbishops. All right. So bishops and archbishops and auxiliary bishops, those are three words you'll hear. Bishops are like the Bishop Spalding. He's the bishop of the Diocese of Nashville. The Diocese of Nashville has less than 100,000 Catholics, so that gives you an idea of how many people we're talking about. Archbishop would be like the Archbishop of New York City. It's not that he is over anybody other than in the Archdiocese of New York City. It gets the name Arch because it is bigger. It's really big. And so like you have the Archdiocese of New York, the Archdiocese of Chicago, Archdiocese of Atlanta. That's where that comes from, okay? So then there are auxiliary bishops. In the Archdiocese, the Archbishop, let me back up. The Bishop of Nashville actually confirms all of our little 8th graders. It's just so wonderful. He goes around. He either does it at the pastoral center, or like this time he's going to come here to confirm our little 8th graders. He's got 100 people of about a little less than 100,000 flock. He's got that takes a lot of time. Bishop of the city of New York, there is no way you're going to be able to do that, right? And so what they do is they have these auxiliary bishops whose duties are, that would be one thing that an auxiliary bishop would do, would be go around and confirm. They have 2 or 3 or 4 of them, how many ever, for a particular archdiocese. Okay. Then underneath there, we talked about hierarchy. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
An auxiliary bishop, an ordained bishop.
Yes.
Same ordination.
Yes. 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 Yep. And typically what might happen is they would be ordained, they would become an auxiliary bishop, and then maybe 5 years later they might become a bishop of not an auxiliary, but a regular bishop of a diocese, or even an archdiocese.
Do bishops work for archbishops?
No. The archbishop, that's a good question. The archbishop, they divide the country and different countries into what they call provinces. And so the Diocese of Nashville is in the province of Louisville. And so you've got basically Tennessee and Kentucky are in the same province, and you have the Archbishop of Louisville is the provincial for the whole, all of that. But he doesn't really have, he doesn't have supervisory control over the bishops. And the bishops, their boss is who? The Pope. And in fact, the bishops go once every 5 years. Each bishop goes to the Pope, to visit the Pope, to tell them the state of affairs in their diocese. Now, it's like a 15-minute meeting, because you're going to find out in a minute, like, how many bishops are there? Well, guess what? There's 5,104 bishops in the world. Okay? So there's 120, there's one Pope, there's 120 cardinals, 18 of them are in the United States, 18 of the cardinals. There are 5,104 bishops. Then you have priests. Priests are divided into, each diocese is divided into parishes, and there are 412,236 priests. So you go from 1 to 18, no, 1 to 120 to 5,000 to 412,000. Huh? Yeah. And so then you have, there are maybe 40,000 deacons, permanent deacons. The permanent deacons are not everywhere in the world. You've got to remember we're a world religion. So underneath all of this, I say underneath it, the body itself, the body of Christ is how many? About a billion. A billion people all over the world. Isn't it great? So, 2 other terms and I'll stop. I'm going way over. But I figured, by the fact that I'm getting questions means that is this good? Okay, I'll finish up. You hear the term Monsignor, like Monsignor Mike Johnston. He was the priest here until 2015. It's an honorary title. It doesn't give you, it's just an honorary title. It's the only way I know to put it. And I know let's see, there's Monsignor Rowling, Monsignor Mike Johnston, Monsignor Steve Gideon, Bevington, Monsignor Bevington. I can name you on almost one hand how many Monsignors there have been. Campion, Monsignor Campion, yes. Okay, Monsignor Richardson. Okay, it's 2 hands. I'm sorry, not one hand, it's 2 hands. But you get my point. There are not very many of them. Okay? And I think I'm going to stop there so you all can at least answer some of the questions. I hope this has been helpful. It's been interesting to respond to all the questions. Thank you.